Renzo,
Yes,
did
Maria.
you watch the last episode of White Lotus season
Oh,
3?
no. I still have to catch up.
I cannot wait to talk about it with you. It drives me crazy because every season, the 3 seasons, it starts with a dead body, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's it. That's not a spoiler.
No, I
But
know.
then they go back and they only tell you who the dead person is in the last episode. I wish they would cut to the chase.
Ah, that's the expression for today. Cutting to the chase.
Oh, what a coincidence,
It's
Renzo.
almost like you planned that. But that is how they get their hooks in you with the story, by cutting to the chase at the very beginning to tease you with that story element that you need to find out, that mystery, right? And what do we say in Spanish for cutting to the chase? Because after all, this is just a Spanish phrase.
This is just a Spanish phrase, a podcast that is companion to News in Slow Spanish, where we explore expressions and the origins of those expressions.
Yes.
So the expression today is
Ir al grano.
cut to the chase, go straight to...
In this case, it's the grain. Ir al grano literally means to go to the grain.
So what is the origin?
Right. So in English, it might make sense to say get to the point, right? Literally, the point meaning the crucial piece of information, or the main argument of what you're trying to say. But in Spanish, we say get to the grain, because this expression goes way back to the early days of, when we were developing agriculture. And so what were we doing? We were planting fields of grain, fields of wheat, of oats, etc., whatever you're planting. And then when it comes time to harvest all of that, it goes through a process of threshing. Do you know what that is? In Spanish, it's trillar.
I have no idea what threshing...
Threshing. So threshing is a mechanical procedure, using tools, also by hand, I'm sure, but it's literally separating the grain from the straw. So another way to say that is actually another English expression that really connects to ir al grano, separating the wheat from the chaff.
So it's like trim, like the unnecessary parts,
Exactly.
and go straight to the point.
The grain, the thing that you want, the grain of rice, the grain of wheat, the grain. You get the point.
I get the point.
Yeah, getting to the important part and leaving behind or discarding the stuff that's not important.
That aligns very much with the philosophy I like of minimal, less is more. Sometimes we are trying to say something and we embellish it so much that we use many 25-cent words. You know how I love writing and I love studying literature, but sometimes I feel authors, they embellish too much instead of going straight to the point.
That reminds
Ir directo
me,
al grano.
Yes, ir al grano. And that reminds me of how I used to write essays in college, and I basically did the opposite, because I thought that my essays had to be really wordy and lengthy, and the word count was really impressive. So I probably could have cut to the chase more often.
Well, and I think that's a common mistake in beginners, to think that by making something sound complicated, they sound smarter. But actually, if you really know a topic, you should be able to explain that topic to a 6-year-old person.
Yes. And I still suffer from that, even in speaking. You may have noticed that, dear listeners, that I have a tendency to ramble. But I have, with age, learned how to ir al grano, how to cut to the chase a little better. I still indulge, but I try. I try to get to the point.
Although sometimes it's interesting when you're hooked, like White Lotus, and I am a huge fan of Mike White, the creator of the White Lotus series. He also is one of the writers of School of Rock. And yes, you remember School of Rock?
Yes.
The roommate of Jack Black?
Yes.
That's Mike White.
Oh, he is the creator of White Lotus?
Of White Lotus, and of another series with Laura Dern that I find also fascinating, which is called Enlightened.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yes. So going back to less is more,
Yes.
I love novels that are short and are able to say everything in like very few pages. But on the other hand, it's very interesting when they hook you with a good story and then they diverge and then they go back.
So in this case, White Lotus is an example of a series or a storytelling doing both things, doing cutting to the chase, ir al grano at the beginning. Here's the thing, there's a murder, there's a body. You really want to find out. And then doing the exact opposite and taking their time, luxuriating in the storytelling, but it's good storytelling.
Because you're already hooked.
You're already hooked. That's right. You've had a taste of the grain, but you don't get the whole thing.
Since we're talking about series, I really need to recommend this 4-episode series called Adolescence.
Oh, I've heard about this on Netflix, right?
Yes, and it's about no spoilers at all, but it talks about many topics. One of them is the influence of social media in adolescents, in teenagers. So it's dark,
Yeah.
it's depressing, but
I
it's
bet.
fascinating. It's really interesting, and it va directo al grano because it's only 4 episodes. I love miniseries.
Me too. If you can tell a story in 4 episodes or 4 chapters or whatever, the installment is, but then you take 20 to do the same thing, you lose me.
That's when they jump the shark. That's
What?
an expression that we don't have in Spanish, but I learned this the jump the shark. You
Jump
don't know
the
that
shark?
expression?
I don't know that
It's when
expression.
you have a series that is going well, and then the producers ask you to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then at some point, you don't know what else to do. So you jump the shark. And it comes from a series that actually, I don't remember the name of the series. I owe you that, dear listeners. But it was a series where they actually made the protagonist jump a shark or something like that. And the expression started being used after that series.
It must be a James Bond movie because that's all I picture, like a classic James Bond, from the Connery era, like a tank full of sharks and you have to jump over it.
Yeah, but I don't think James Bond series have jumped the shark. I think
true.
they're still
That's true.
relevant.
But since you mentioned that, why don't we give our listeners a little bit of history on the other expression, the English variant that we've been using throughout this episode, cutting to the chase.
Mhm.
Guess where that comes from?
I have no idea.
Also from cinema. You were just talking about, White Lotus and other, and the expression jump the shark. Cutting to the chase goes back to the early days of cinema where people would be, the director and editor would be working together in the literally the editing room, cutting pieces of film, right? Cutting the film and then pasting it together to put the final movie together. And the expression says cut to the chase because if there's a lot of boring stuff or filler going on, you basically want to cut to the exciting part, which back in those days was usually a chase scene.
What do you mean back in those days?
It still is,
nowadays.
I know.
Now, what is the best car chase you've ever seen in any movie of all time?
The best car chase? That's difficult. You put me on the spot and I have to pick something.
I have one.
Okay, tell me.
Blues Brothers. It goes inside a mall. It's amazing.
Oh, yes. That's right. That's a really amazing scene. Another much more modern, but one of my favorite modern directors, Christopher Nolan. Have you seen the movie Tenet?
Yes,
That
I
has
didn't
an
understand anything.
Yeah, it's one of those. He does not cut to the chase.
He doesn't va directo al grano.
No, Christopher
at all.
Nolan no va directo al grano. But that car scene, that car chase scene, that's something.
It's a good one.
It's a good one.
All right.
It's really good. Okay, vamos al grano. Let's cut to the chase to end this episode.
And we thank you for listening. We invite you to listen to News in Slow Spanish if you want even more expressions in Spanish, examples in Spanish, and the history behind the expressions.
And if you want to talk about expressions with other people just like you who are learning Spanish and also
with us,
every subscriber to News in Slow Spanish can use rooms where you can participate in live conversations with other listeners of the podcast and with your lovely hosts.
And we can talk about White Lotus, adolescence, current politics.
And jumping the shark.
Hey, wait, guys, just 1 second before we stop. This is Rylan in the studio.
Oh.
It was Happy Days. It was Fonzie jumping over a shark with water skis.
There you go. Happy days,
Wow.
Fonzie jumping over the shark. So now we all know. Thank you, Rylan.
Almost, no, James Bond is almost as cool as Fonzie. I was going to say the reverse, but yeah,
Almost.
Fonzie is cooler.
All right. Thank you, Rylan.
Thank
you,
you.
Renzo. And see you next time.
Adios.